Welcome to the Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand, a podcast for leading financial professionals, or rainmakers, and their teams that offer support for securing a successful future. From marketing help to staffing structure, listen and subscribe for actionable insights from advisors and skilled professionals alike.
Hello, this is Matt Seitz, your host of today's Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand podcast. Welcome to part 2 of our interview with Josh Friberg as we discuss tips and tricks for engaging and converting your seminar audience. If you want to check out part 1 of our interview, be sure to visit the C2P website, or you can download it on your favorite podcasting platform. Enjoy! Thank you for sharing these, and I think it kind of bleeds into our next one of C2P. Everybody knows we're a process company. Well, you have your set processes when it comes to structuring speaking at events so that attendees are more engaged. And obviously, you can't get them to take action if they're not engaged in your presentation. And you use I think you and I are similar that way, using your humor to engage the audience. But, and I went through, and obviously our team did a great job. I was checking out your website beforehand. Can you talk about your 5 steps for elevating the audience and talk that through with our crew?
Yeah, absolutely. So most events still are what I think of as like conference 1.0 or workshop 1.0, classroom 1.0, which is primarily lecture, right? It's talking at people. Okay. Now, why is that? It's because people are scared to talk. They're nervous to talk, and our egos are too big. And so it's interesting. Once you get over your fear of public speaking, the easiest thing in the world to do is to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. It's actually super easy. The hardest thing to do is to shut up. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do is we shift to like conference 2.0, conference maybe even 3.0, and we'll talk about that offline someday. But at the very least, let's talk about, again, go back to our advisors and maybe an event that they would be doing, right? They're going to have some of their clients in, and they're going to do a teaching on tax planning, right? Going back to what I said earlier, what the audience cares about is themselves. They're asking the question, why do I care about this? So I'm going to actually start that event, not by telling them why this is important, right? But I'm going to actually find out. I'm going to ask them. And so that's where I came up with this 5-step process. Now, it's based on an old process. That's a good one. It's a famous one, which is tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, right? So we would say, hey, tonight we're going to cover the 3 laws of tax planning in 2024. And when you're finished, you're going to know those 3 laws and how you can apply them. Then we're going to go through number 1, number 2, number 3. And then at the end, we're going to go. And so that was the 3 laws of tax preparation in 2024. Number 1, number 2, number 3, right? That's a very simple, that's classic. It's well done. I've adjusted that into this 5-step process, which is that, hey, in a minute, we're going to do an exercise where we're going to look at this question. Why is it important for you to do great tax planning this year? We're going to ask why it's important for you, for your family. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this because these rules are not like secret, and yet most people don't do them. And so for you to be able to walk out the door today and take action on them, you need to tap into your motivation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell them why we're about to do this exercise, where I'm going to ask them what they're interested in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell them what we're going to do. So in a minute, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to journal on this question, right? And then you're going to get in groups of 3 or 4 around the room, and you're going to have a chance to share why it's important for you to tax plan well this year, right? So the first step was I'm going to tell them why we're doing this. The second step is I'm going to tell them what we're doing. Then they're going to do it. I'm going to give them an opportunity to journal. They're going to get in groups of 3 or 4 and talk about it. When they come out of those groups, they're going to share in the room. A few people are going to share why it's important. Now, here's what's really interesting. I believe that every person that comes to your presentation is there for one reason. And it's your job to figure out what that reason is, right? You have 50 people in a room, you got 50 different reasons for being there, right? Because listen, ain't nobody there because they love taxes. Nobody's there because
Hey,
they
the
love
dirty little secret.
right? They're not geeked out about retirement planning. No. What are they excited about? They're excited about sending their kids to college. You guys know this, by the way. I know every one of your people knows how to do this, knows how to start their one-on-one consultation by moving their notes to the side and saying, why is this important to you?
Yeah.
What's your life look like in 25 years? Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing for this hour that we're together. Okay, let's go back. I tell them why we're about to do what we're gonna do. Then I tell them what we're gonna do. Then we do it. The next thing I do, and this is the big move to Conference 2.0, is I make everybody in the room co-teacher and co-learner. And
Mm.
I say, what did you learn just now? Why is this important to you? And so I'm going to ask them what just happened. And then I'm going to ask, why did that work? Hey, we just spent a couple minutes talking about this question. What did you notice? And people will say, wow, I felt really connected to the people in the room that I'm here with. Right, we do this at some of the events we've done, Matt, and our
Yeah.
advisors will say that are at the Collegium or that we're at the Orlando retreat, like, wow, I didn't even know Bob from across the country is doing that same thing, and we connected, and now we're gonna get together later, right? And this is where we actually become that community that shares. Right? We need to create our experiences. And so we could do that with at our events. And you can do this, by the way, we talked about if you're invited as a guest onto somebody else's stage. You
Yeah.
can even do it then. I mean, I've done it on a stage with 500 people and said, "Hey, let's hear from you." And there's ways to do that.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, it's very powerful. And for those of you that have been to these C2P events, you see exactly what you're talking about, Josh, is like it's that power of the collaboration,
mhm.
and that works when you're with other advisors. But I see what you're getting at from the advisor standpoint of there can be the power of that in your audience when you have the consumers in there that are relating on what they're going through as well. That relatability and again, I believe that plays into the trust factor too of working of having those discussions together.
Yeah. Well, and people don't, right? The classic presentation on this, right, was Simon Sinek and the Golden
Mhm.
Circle, right? Where he talks about people don't buy from you because of what you do, right? They
Yeah.
buy from you because of why you do it.
Why?
And a different way to say that might be it's not what you teach them, it's how they feel, right? And so we want them to feel comfortable, connected, able to take having agency. I'm able to take action, right? I know what to do next. And when you can help them tap into that, right? And that's the shift. And that's where like I work with a lot of subject matter experts, fabulous at what they know, but don't know this part. So they'll be like, Josh, well, you're good at this. And so we'll partner and I'll help with the conversation and then say, all right, hey, Matt, now can you tell us the 3 rules of tax planning? Right. And then it's like, okay, now let's engage our audience so that we can hear from them because they're all experts at their lives and they need your partnership. They need you to be on their team, which means they need to be able to trust you. They need to be able to feel that it's collaborative. I mean, you've had this experience. There's nothing worse than going to a doctor that just tells you what you're going to do and doesn't listen to you and doesn't involve you in the conversation. Well, the same thing's true and it, by the way, as not an advisor, right? It's one of the biggest fears that the public has about going to an advisor that they're going to feel judged, that they're going to feel like
Right.
they're stupid and they made a bunch of mistakes walking in, or that they are just going to be told what to do, but not like feel like they have agency in making those decisions.
Yeah, like you said, they want to work with someone they trust. They're going to remember how you make them feel. It's the whole people don't care how much until they know how much you
Right.
care.
Yeah.
That starts up on stage. It starts at the beginning. They're not going to take the one-on-one meeting with you until they get the warm and fuzzy feeling
Yeah.
when you're on stage or in a webinar.
And so in the same way as you would do one-on-one with a family, right? Set your notes aside, connect at a human level and say, what's important to you about this conversation today? You can do the same thing on a stage. Is you can stop. I mean, I've told you, right? Like maybe we should have said it earlier. I have a rule that is as soon as you start, tear up your notes.
Yeah.
Because if you're stuck in your notes, like, oh, what was I going to say next? You actually get lost. So throw them away and now just roll. And I know some people aren't comfortable with that. And I understand if you need that there to stay on track, but if you can figuratively set your notes aside and connect at a human level with people and listen to your audience, hear their voices, make them like co-experts with you, you're going to gain a lot of credibility and a lot of connection and loyalty.
It's so true. And if you're listening and because I've been there too, so this is not
Yeah.
pointing fingers. When you create all those notes and you're like, I just don't want to forget anything. So I wrote everything down. You can't help but read them. They're there, so you're going to rely on them. But to your point,
Mhm.
if you hide them, if you drop them, if you leave them at the podium, whatever, you don't have that crutch anymore. But you quickly realize you don't need the crutch.
Right. And oh, here's a little tip that we didn't talk about, but cut out 30 to 50% of your material you plan to speak on. I know that sounds like a lot. It is. Like, people are trying to say way too much, and
Yeah.
your audience will be so much happier if you say less and finish early.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to leave them wanting more anyway. You
Right.
tell them everything, they don't need to be with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I guess transitioning slightly, we've been talking about events kind of is abroad and kind of focusing more
Mm.
on the in-person workshop element, but
Mhm.
there's obviously several different, especially for our advisors. There's the in-person workshops, there's panels, there's webinars, which are still going strong. That was a big focus during the pandemic, but even coming out of them, a lot of our advisors are having a lot of success there. Can you talk about the difference in terms of delivery for each of those, or maybe tips for success depending on the different medium that they're communicating in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would let's talk virtual for a second because I
Mhm.
think that's gonna be really helpful for people, and I would encourage folks to consider moving away from webinars. I know you said they're going well. I think most people, when they think of a webinar, they think I can come on and I can passively learn. I can have my camera off, my microphone off, and I could just passively sit. Those are really hard to deliver as the presenter. You're looking at a
Mhm.
black screen. It's a lot like just recording to yourself in front of the camera. It's super hard to do. And there's no feedback loop. So I really like to move to an online experience, to a virtual gathering, I mean, I don't know what I've called some of these like digital campfire, like something
Right.
where we know it's going to feel more like in person without you needing to wear pants, right? Without you having to drive. So that is one move that I would encourage folks to make is say like, "Hey, we're going to gather." I think you'll get more value from 12 people with cameras on and microphones on than you will from 50 off.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you do get fortunate enough to have more than 50 people on Zoom, even over like 30, you need a co-pilot. You need somebody to help with tech challenges. You need somebody to help build breakout rooms, to run the chat, things like that. But a couple of things that can help a lot. I like standing. It really gives me a lot more energy. It makes me feel, I mean, I'm a pretty energetic guy, but it makes me just feel more comfortable speaking. The other thing is setting up your camera in a place that, makes you look good. Now it's tricky right now. Here I'm staring at the camera for those of you watching on video, but if I look too far away and I'm looking down in the corner of the video screen, it doesn't look as good, right? So trying to get your camera in a place where you're at least have the illusion of decent eye contact is helpful. And so taking control of your space. And then the other thing on virtual, just from a technical perspective, is good audio beats is more important than good video. So making sure that your audio sounds good is going to be really helpful for your audiences. From there, I think a lot of it, honestly, Matt, is kind of the same as you would do in person, right? Which, by the way, is one of the things that I'm doing. And maybe this is a good shift. When it comes to in person, think about why people are coming together, right?
Right.
They're not coming together for passive consumption, right? If they want passive consumption, they're going to go to the movie theater. Oh, wait, nobody goes to movie theaters anymore. Why? Because passive consumption happens better at home in my pajamas on my phone, right? So, as good as all of our people are, nobody's coming to be blown away by their brilliance. They're coming for deep human connection. And it's not your job to make everybody, you're not a drum circle.
Right.
And you are a place though where people can feel connected. You are a place where, and by the way, the conversations that we're having, that your financial advisors are having, are conversations about life, about family, about aspirations and fears, about like deep human things. And if we start pulling out a calculator as our first move, if we start going into the technical, if we go into head before we've gone into heart, we lose them. So if you're getting people to come together live, either in person or virtual, you want to do something more than passive consumption. You want to do something transformative. And maybe this is too technical, maybe this is too high level, Matt, but I just think that's
No,
why
I think it's
humans
good.
gather.
And yeah, I think what you're sharing too is a good tip for our audience, but it's also going to help differentiate them than the other advisors in the area that might be doing webinars or in-person workshops or whatever there where it is more transactional.
Hmm.
So I don't think it's too in the weeds in that. I think that this would help serve not only as a tip for how to present themselves, but in some respects as that differentiator.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When it goes back, I mean, it demonstrates a level of care that just isn't there if we're just trying to show off how much we know.
Yeah. And I like that with webinars because I know at JL Smith, we do this too, where we do a lot of them recorded. So it's
Hmm.
hard to get too personal, but finding ways to interact on that webinar side. But I really like the idea of making them more like a campfire type environment where you're doing them
Yeah.
live and having everyone turn on their camera. I mean, we've all done that for those with C2P. Those are our weekly coffee breaks where we're doing that, and you all have your camera on.
Yeah. That's a great model.
Exactly that. There's no reason you can't do something like that as an advisor with prospects and clients as a way to interact where, like you said, you can still be at home in your pajamas if you want.
Yeah. I, yeah, I think it's a big opportunity. Now, that said, right, the unidirectional stuff still has a place, right? That is a great place for transmitting information. It's about taking information from someone who knows something about a topic to someone who doesn't know something about a topic. I get it. That's a great way to transfer that information. The same way that writing a book is, the same way that, and I think the best medium for that, if it's going to be talking, is going to be a recorded video that people can watch on demand. So one value of of a unidirectional webinar is it just forces you to record it. I just would wonder what the value is of having people there live unless you're interacting with them,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
and like you said, if nothing else, you record it, you have something that you can go back and
Yeah, and now it
continue to
becomes
get better.
right. Yeah, yeah, and then you could take that, but I also think you could do this if you wanted to do a series over the course of the next year of like 1 hour live trainings uh, for clients, and you're gonna do like a 15-minute teaching in the middle of it, right? So you're gonna guide some conversations on the front end and back end, and then you're gonna do a 15-minute teaching. Yeah, record that 15-minute teaching, and then that goes into some sort of like delivery system where you can say, "Hey, I know you weren't here last year, but we did this 12-month series, and it's actually only it's 12, 15-minute videos on the things that we think are most important." Right? And now you have that as collateral that you can share lots of different ways. Because before our people sit down with us, before your customers, clients come sit down with you, they've been cyber stalking you for a while. They've been on
Mhm.
your website for a while.
Right.
And so if you can teach them something, if you can share with them your values, your perspective, like how your worldview is different than the person down the street, I think you're right. That's a big differentiator.
Nice. So, one of your ultimate goals I know is to get advisors to walk away from your sessions with a clear action plan.
Uh-huh.
To those listening now, what's one step or maybe the first step that they can start working on right now to get them speaker ready?
Okay, to get speaker ready. So I'm going to do one that's a little bit more abstract, and then I'll give you one that's real tactical. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
All right. The abstract one would be ask different questions, right? Ask different questions. And here's the questions that I would start before we do an event, right? So we've decided we want to gather some people together, or we're going to be in front of an audience, right? Whatever that looks like. We've talked about virtual today. We've talked about small groups, large groups, in person, right? We got lots of different options. The first question that I would encourage you to ask is, what conversations do I want to have in this room? Do I want to have happen in this room? Because I'm not even going to be part of most of the conversations, right? What conversations do I want to have happen in this room? Okay. The next question is, what, like we're doing right now, what do I want my people to walk out of the room with? What do I want them to walk out of the room having learned, having felt, and a commitment to action? They've either taken an action or they've committed to an action. And that's all about them. That's all about them. And the last question is, what's a win for me? Right? So if I'm going to go to all the trouble to reserve the restaurant, going to buy dinner and to bring people in and to get the slides put it together, whatever, if I'm going to go to all the trouble, what's a win? Oh, I want 5 appointments scheduled after this. Right? Like, know what that win is, and then design everything based on the response to those questions. What conversations do I want to have? What's a win for them? What's a win for me? Okay. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
That's the abstract. Okay. Now let's get to tactical. Start talking, right? Like, so get out there and speak to your camera, put it on Instagram, right? Speak to, check with compliance on all that stuff, right? That you do the disclaimer.
Good move.
Right? But like, speak into a camera, put it on Instagram, record a video, reach out to anybody that will let you speak, right? So this is where we talked, just briefly hinted at it, but in your community are influential people. Kiwanis Club, the Rotary, the Chamber of Commerce, right? Like, just get out there and fail forward. Just get out there and try and find out what happens and learn. What you'll learn is what works, what doesn't work. Look for local Toastmasters clubs. Toastmasters is a fabulous organization for getting better at communication, right? And if you go to a club and you don't care for it, go find a different one. There are dozens of them in your community, right? The other place I like to look is the National Speakers Association. It's not a perfect fit for what most of your folks are wanting to do. It is people who are trying to be professional speakers, but it's a great place to network and a great place to improve your speaking chops. And then I think the last thing, Matt, would be, when you do these things, reflect on the experience. So go speak at the Chamber of Commerce, and then when you're done, watch the video back and say, what went well? What are my strengths? What are my superpowers? What did I do really good at?
Yeah.
How do I do more of that? Right? Spend about 80% of your time on that, and then spend about 20% of your time on what's one thing I could improve? What's one thing I could do to make this a better experience for the people that gather?
No, I love that. And if you're listening, you're part of our C2P community too, reach out to us, participate in things. I know I mentioned this at our recent advisor trip in Quebec. We had a panel there for those that are interested in doing podcasts or aren't sure, be a guest, experience it that way. We have all kinds of roundtables at our events at C2P. We have the weekly coffee breaks. Would love for more of our advisors to participate in those and get that experience and try that out. But from personal experience, I 100% agree with you. Like, at some point, you just got to get out there and give it a try.
Well, and I love what you're saying about podcasting. You think about the C2P community, and if you've got a bunch of people who are wanting to do podcasting, right? Just round robin as guests for one another. And then here's the interesting thing. You might get some traction from your own podcast. You know where your real traction is? Being a guest on someone else's podcast, right? Like, you know this already. Like, I'm going to be sharing this podcast when it drops to everybody in my circle. And it creates a third party endorsement because, oh, C2P thinks Josh is a subject matter expert. So maybe I should too, right? They don't know who's right. Like my
Yeah.
audience might not know who you all are. And yet they're going to see that third party endorsement. So now if Judy goes on Bill's podcast and then Judy as a guest shares it with her community, she gets the third party endorsement from Bill.
No, I love it. And even going back to your first point that you made about the expectations of what does your audience want out of this, but what do
Mm,
you want out of it? What's a win for you? I think that's big because for a lot of advisors that I talk to just within our community, it's was your event a success? And then it's, I don't know, we had this many registrants or this many attendees or this many that booked a call or a meeting. Well, I don't want to say it's disappointing, but it's like you should feel good about that. So hopefully go into
mhm.
those events saying, I want 5 meetings. Because then
Yeah.
if you got 5, that was a success. You should feel good about that. Or maybe you are just starting out and you're like, I want to hit a certain amount of attendees. As long as I
Mhm.
can speak in front of 30 people, you're going to get the meetings at some point, whether it's then or your follow-up communications, but it was an at bat. So for right
Yeah.
now, that particular event in that point in time was a success.
And not only that, Matt, like, so there's there's the thing you're doing, and then there's the other benefits that come from
Mhm.
it. So you speak to these 30 people in front of this room. 4, 5, 6 of them loved what you just did and would be more than happy to speak into a camera and tell the world about it. So now we just generated 6 testimonials that we can put out over the next few weeks. Oh, and we could take the video of you speaking in front of an audience. That looks very different than the same video spoken in your studio at home,
Yeah.
right? And now we've got the what's called B-roll, right? The audience shots of people smiling and enjoying what you're having to say and go, "Oh, yeah," right? And
Yeah.
sharing those things. And so now we've created a whole bunch of extra collateral and testimonials and marketing materials that we can use in our business.
It can be that easy to create content.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, hand your teenager your phone and say, make sure you take some video while we're doing this, right? That's the low budget option. And then, of course, you know, have your admin do it or send them to a class on videography so that they can make really good video or hire a videographer.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you very much for being part of this. If our audience would like more information on a lot of these points and tips that you've shared, where can they find more information from you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find once you figure out how to spell my name. So they can go to my website, which is joshfriberg.com. And Friberg is spelled like an iceberg on Friday. It's Friberg. They can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. That name almost always ends up with me. So,
Got it. And we will make sure we spell that out in our show notes on the applicable mediums where we're sharing this as well. And of course, you can also find Josh at whatever applicable C2P event we're at that point in time.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See you
So,
there.
yeah. So thank you very much, Josh. Again, very helpful information for all of our listeners today. And thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Never miss an episode by subscribing now to discover new resources and strategies. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help scale and secure your business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.